This is a production of Cornell University.
All right, welcome everyone. This will be a workshop on how to craft a CV. And we just want to start off by introducing ourselves to just kind of show how we all come kind of various different paths to get here from graduate school. So,
hi, I'm Emily. I am a fifth year now, and I came here straight out of my undergrad, which I did at the University of Connecticut.
and I'm Nick. I went to UC Berkeley, did a little bit of research there, but actually spent 2 years at a medical school as a lab tech before I applied to graduate school.
I'm Katie. I went to the University of Florida, and I did a bunch of different volunteering / field tech gigs, and basically wound up taking 3 years off by like doing real work, and wound up, the last thing I did before coming here was supervising field teams, which was a lot of fun.
My name is Kara. I'm a first-year PhD student in the entomology department. I went to Yale as an undergrad and did various summer research projects through fellowships that I got through the college, and then I went on to a Master's of Public Health there afterwards, and then I took a year off of academia and worked on ranches in Wyoming and Argentina, and during that time also applied into Cornell at that point.
Hi everyone, I'm Cotto. I did my undergrad in University of Puerto Rico, and I did research in the University of Puerto Rico, and summer research in Ohio State, and another one here in Cornell.
Hi, my name is Anzi. I'm originally from Colombia, and I have like a long path in academia. I did an undergrad. In that time, we are required to have like a research project at the end of the program. So I present like a thesis. Then I work in institute. It's a research institute in Colombia too. Then I did my master in the University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez, and then I worked as a lab manager at Duke University in North Carolina, and then I came here.
So what we're going to do today is go through these different sections of the CV. And one thing what we want to emphasize is that there's no real hard and fast rules to writing a CV, but these are some ways that you can organize it that I think a lot of people agree are, some of the better ways to do it. And start off with just your education section, which is pretty simple, but it should include just where you did your undergraduate, what your major was, and if you want to, you can put your GPA if you want to show off your GPA, but you definitely don't need to put it up there. So it's an easy way for someone to see if you happen to have a very good GPA right away, but they'll have your transcripts and stuff too, so you don't need to put it up there. And it's also a nice place to put if you had any kind of honors or something like that when you graduate. Some institutions really emphasize GREs when you're applying to grad school. And if you did particularly well in the GRE and you want to highlight that right away, you can put that right under your education section. That's definitely not a requirement. And a lot of programs really are de-emphasizing the GRE, but that's kind of a institution by institution thing. And then the next section, which some people have and some people don't, but it's kind of nice to orient what you're interested in, is this kind of research interest section. And so in that section, you would put a really short summary of what you're interested in. Sometimes it can even be just keywords of kind of topics that you're really interested in, or what are your kind of career goals or something like that. But at any rate, it's a very short section and also definitely optional.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about research experience, and this is very important in the CV. And it could have some overlap with your statement of purpose because you are going to talk a lot about that statement of purpose. But in your CV, you want at least to list the main things that you have learned during your research experience. So first thing, if you don't have any research experience right now, look for it. Try to get it. some internships, some volunteer work, look at labs that are recruiting students to help with other grad students. This is very important. So the sooner you start, the better. In this section, it's important to basically hone the skills that you gain, what learning the PCR, good like something in bags and prepared. So it's important to make a list of these things and prioritize what you want to put in there. And well, as I mentioned before, it's important to start to look at these opportunities. And you don't want to make this a very long thing. Remember, you don't want to overlap or be redundant with your SOP because you are going to be more abundant there about this part.
Excuse me.
Okay.
All right. Publications and presentations. So depending on how many you have, they can be separate sections. For me, mine's still just one section, both put together. So for publications, you can include any peer-reviewed or published publications. It can also include theses if they are like archived in online through your university or local institution, as long as they are kind of readily accessible, like somebody can search it and find it online and read it. You can put it in the publication section. For presentations, that would be any symposiums or conferences you've gone to, even if it's just at your institution, and posters and oral presentations both count. And then of course, when you actually put them on your CV, make sure you're following citation guidelines and you keep it consistent. So pick one and then stick with it the whole way through. Yes?
How would you cite a poster presentation? Like, obviously, if you're doing a paper, you'll get a journal and all of that. But how do you
So she asked how you cite for a poster or presentation. And the way that I've done it is that I put the title of the poster or presentation, what conference it was, and then where the conference was, and also the date of the conference. Yes.
And
Any other questions?
just so you guys know, we're going to be repeating the questions back to you for the sake of the recording.
Yes, that's why.
Not because we think you're hard to hear.
Right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
For the publication presentation, how far back should you go? If do you give every single one you've ever given, or do you only give the one that's relevant, or what would you suggest?
Good question. So she asked how far back you should go in terms of putting publications on your CV. That is a good question, and I think it's going to depend on the person. So if you have a lot of publications, you might not want to put the ones from, 2007 that aren't necessarily relevant for what you want to do moving forward. But like if you have like 2 or 3, you could put them all on there.
I would say it depends on what the CV is for. Like a lot of the grad schools ask for a 2-page CV, so it's more like a resume. So then you'd have to kind of narrow it down to fit it all in. Then you might just want to select the most relevant ones to the type of research you're applying to. But if it's a true CV, then it's really everything you've ever done. Then you should have everything.
Similar to that, how would you go about citing, say you did the same poster, like do you put every single conference, or do you summarize it all in one section, or how would you do that?
I can answer that because I presented the same undergrad research poster 4 times. Yeah, so I've gotten more and more concise over the years, and I think concise is generally better. So you might list the title if it's basically the same across conferences. If you change a couple words, but it's still essentially the same poster, just pick a title, and then list the locations and the years of those different conferences.
I have a thing to add. So for me, I usually keep a copy of my full resume. That will be very helpful. And then when you're applying to any position, you like make it concise and very specific to the position that you're applying. So that's really helpful. Like keep a copy in your computer with everything that you have done.
So I found that there's like a lot of variation between schools, what they're asking in terms of resumes or CVs. I think a lot of the work is start at the very beginning when you email the professor to start the contact. There you need to basically show as much as you've done, and whatever is relevant for this professor is what you want to highlight. So you can have like the resume with everything that you have done, and then just copy and paste or delete some reduced version for the application. But or to highlight what you want to show to that professor you are contacting in that moment. So there's a lot of variation, but if you have like a long research experience, it's better to show like that experience. You don't need to put every poster or every talk. You just want to go maybe the most prestigious conference that you had gone, and you can start. Sometimes people like to see the history. Oh, she started to do research 10 years ago. That's pretty good, something like that. So you want to emphasize that you have been consistent, have been a long history of doing your research, and you can highlight just maybe the most prestigious or the one that you think had most of the data or something like
No other questions? Okay. So next I'm going to be talking about two more sections, so teaching experience and volunteer and extracurricular. So just kind of for context, these are important to grad schools. First of all, a common way of funding students is through TA-ships. So if you can show that you have some sort of experience or skill in teaching, then that might be looked well upon in the application process. So if you've been an undergraduate TA, that's definitely something you're going to want to put into your CV for your application. Or if you've done any sort of tutoring, whether it's at college level or even if you've tutored younger children, that shows that you have experience teaching someone and can explain concepts in a way that's understandable to others. And then for your volunteer and extracurricular experience, one important thing is to highlight any leadership roles or managerial roles you've had. So even if you've been in a club for all 4 years and you've just been president this past year or something, you're going to want to put that like up front in your description of that topic. So maybe like highlighting your president role in the title or something like that. So just emphasize those so whoever's looking at it can know that you have this experience leading others. And you're going to want to be selective and succinct. Speaking with some of you guys, it sounds like you've done like 1,000,001 things, and that's amazing. But you aren't going to have all that room for a 2-page CV. So you're going to want to choose what's most relevant or what you feel most passionate about, what you've spent the most time on, if you're feeling like you're pressed for space. Better to elaborate on the things that you care about or have done a little bit more with than to list something you did maybe one day, 1 year, or something like that. And yeah, so you can use this to support other sections of your resume, but you don't want to be redundant. So for example, if you volunteered in a lab, you're going to want to put that under research experience, not under your volunteer experience. First of all, PIs are going to care more about your research experience. So that's probably where their eye is going to go first. So if you have that experience, even if it's volunteer, not paid, you're going to want to put that in your research experience to highlight it more effectively. And then don't repeat it in the volunteer section. No need to be redundant. And yeah, so I mean, I guess it is important if you have done any volunteer or extracurricular experience to add that in, because just like your applications for undergrad, grad schools care that you're going to add something to the community. You're going to make it a more vibrant place. So like, for example, all the students here working on this, It's because they're people who care and they are active and engaged in the community. So if you can show you're going to be that type of person when you come to school, then that's going to add something to the grad community. And grad schools are going to want you more for that type of personality trait. Yeah.
So like say you're helping refugee families learn English, that would be something that put under that.
Yeah. No. So say the question is, say you're helping. Yeah. So say you're helping someone learn English. Yes, I would definitely add that. I think first of all, you're teaching. Second of all, that shows that you're engaged in the community and care about others. And I think that's something important to add. Yes.
If you have the background where you got the education and got the teaching certification, but you let it lapse because it just like wasn't the field for you, is including that a problem? Like, does it highlight a problem that you're actually, made the choice to steer away from teaching, or is it okay to say I have experience?
Right. So the question is, if you have some sort of qualification from the past and then didn't necessarily follow up on that, is that actually a negative thing to put in because it shows that you weren't committed to it when you didn't follow up on it? I think that'll depend on the situation, but I would say I would still include it because you have that qualification and that training, and so it could come in handy. I think especially if you at some point in your application can explain why you didn't pursue that and that it's not because you hate teaching people or something, then that would make it clear why you veered away from that. But I think it'll depend on like the context. Yeah.
Remember, this is this is all complementary with the rest of the package. Don't think that this is like unique. Professors, you are applying to a lab or to a department, and there's going to be a professor that say, "Oh, this student looks interesting," and that person is going to read your CV and your SOP in detail because it's a commitment. It goes in both ways. So it's going to read everything, and you don't want to be redundant, but then you can say, yeah, I have this experience, and then you in your SOP you can say, yeah, I have this, but my call was go and look birds or something like that. So it's complementary. You put the CV highlights basically your skills, what you are done, and then your SOP you basically embellish and put nice words about your experience and decisions of life, things like that.
Also to go to the question about something that's maybe seems slightly irrelevant to what you're applying for, I think also you can find surprising or unexpected connections with the person you're applying to by adding things that aren't necessarily about science. Like for example, I added in my work with horses on ranches in my application to grad school, and the PI that I work with now has worked with horses her whole life. So that was actually something we talked about during our interview. And so like, I didn't just ignore that part of my interest in my life because it didn't have anything to do with mosquitoes. So yeah, I think you weigh what's important and what you have space for. Sorry.
All right. Okay. So this is like a tricky section just because terminology can vary a lot. So probably a lot of you have received some kind of a scholarship or fellowship or financial aid in college or beyond. So you want to be careful that, first of all, the things that you're putting on your CV in a grant, scholarships, and award section, you differentiate according to the type of award it is. So fellowships are generally some sort of program where your status is as a fellow. So usually like the words will be in the program name, but it may or may not include financial aid or a stipend. Usually it's a fellowship that's associated with research. So usually when people see fellowship, they think research fellowship. Scholarships can be other sorts of financial aid, or you may have received a scholarship that's non-research, or maybe you just didn't have a title of fellow, it wasn't part of a program, but you applied for it and got it. Generally, maybe the others can speak to this too, but I would stick with either fellowships or research grants as descriptions, because that's kind of what PIs are used to reading. Scholarships is something that's like, it's a term that's often used at the undergraduate level, but not as much as the graduate student level. So if you specifically got money for research, you can call it a research grant. If you're part of a fellowship program, you should probably just call it a fellowship program. And generally, like if you got any need-based scholarships, that's not something that goes on your CV just because it's, you know, need-based and it's not something that you apply for given your experience. And you want to clarify, especially the best thing that you can put in this section is that you applied for money for your own independent research, which is probably what you're going to put in there. And you know, that's something that if you haven't done already, like it's a great thing to do your senior year or past your senior year. And we'll definitely be talking to you about that in our breakout groups. But yeah, so like the general idea with this section is to say like, I applied for funding for my research and I got some, even if it's just a couple $100. Like the amount at this stage really doesn't matter as much as the fact that you applied for and received it. I don't know what's going on tonight. But yeah, and if you worked on an application with someone in your lab, either the PI of the lab or a postdoc in the lab or a PhD student, you can state that in your CV that you applied with XYZ. Are there any questions? Yeah.
So I'm wondering about what you mean by awards. Like say you got a travel award to go to the conference but not necessarily present. Or say this opportunity itself. Was that something that you would put in the award section?
Yeah, so yeah, I think award is a more general statement, so it can definitely capture those things. If you've gotten multiple travel awards, I might put that in a different section, but that's definitely something that can go in. You would just want to state clearly that that you received a travel award to attend this conference, and that's a really good thing to include in your CV. Yeah.
So you were offered 2 travel awards for like 1 conference, only choose 1.
Yeah.
So like, would you say that like, I accepted this? I was like offered this, but I denied this. So,
so the question is about if you get 2 awards and you can only choose 1, which is a great problem to have. You don't need to say which one you chose. You can just say received award X and Y for conference blank. I don't think you need to say that I only use this one. So I mean, I think it shows that you're very competitive.
You got it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like a general point to make. If you applied for something and you received it, or even if you received an honorable mention for something, this is something that comes up a lot that like, you know, minorities and women tend to say less often when they've received an honorable mention. But that matters. It shows that you worked for it and that you were almost there and you're a high quality candidate. So it's something like that that's sort of like borderline, but it shows that you did the work and that you were, you know, either got it accepted or got an honorable mention. Tend to include it, especially for research money. Yeah.
Okay, so like I work for a teaching lab at my institution, and the lab coordinator, she writes a lab manual. But she told me, she's like, oh, she put me in like the acknowledgement page for like the lab manual. Oh, you can put that on your CV if you want to. And I was like, how do you put that in?
I mean, I think that's a good question. So it's about if you're acknowledged. No, it's a lab resource manual.
It's a lot, yeah. It's a manual that the students use for our teaching methodologies.
Did you help develop the lab resource manual?
Yeah, I helped develop it, but I also like I work for the teaching lab, so I like behind the scenes actions.
Yeah.
Materials that students use. I feel that very much.
That's like, I mean, I feel like that's something, if you're developing materials for any kind of course, even if you're like not an official author on anything, that's something that should probably go in your teaching section. And it doesn't have to be like author, manual XYZ, but it can be just a description of what you did. So developed materials for manuals, you know, name just like brief words that like can capture the, you know, the content.
And then I would like cite.
Yeah, if you have a citation for the manual, that's awesome. You know, if not, it can be just sort of a description of your work. It's nice when you can sort of plug in a word that's like author or like co-author or editor or something, because that's like, it like helps people key in on it. But if it's not that simple, then just trying to state what you did in a concise way is a great, alternative.
I just want to quickly go back to the second half of a previous question, that this weekend, you can put it on the CV, and because you did apply for it, and you guys all got accepted, so you should definitely put it on your CV under grants, fellowships, and awards.
Yeah. Please do. Yeah.
Should we quickly go through
Yeah.
this?
Okay, so for the skill sections of your CV, you should be very specific and concise. You should add experience that you have had in previous jobs, undergraduate research or field or lab courses. It will be great if you can be specific about the type of position that you're applying. For example, if you're applying for a molecular lab that require molecular techniques, you should add that you know how to do a PCR, you know how to do Western blot. You also looking at if you know any type of programming language like C, C++, or Java. If you are proficient in another language like Mandarin, Spanish, or French, that's a great skill to have. If you are very proficient in working with a computer software like R or Perl, that's a great skill to add to the skill section in your CV. Not so great to add in the skill section, personal attributes like responsible, teamwork, like I guess everyone he'll have like me, and and Microsoft or Macintosh software proficiency. And that's something that you would like to take out of your CV.
Oops, sorry. Okay, so we'll probably discuss this a lot as we're going through your CVs with you. But these are just a few things about formatting. And by the way, we're going to post all these PowerPoints online, so don't feel the need to, type furiously. But generally, just really simple. The first bullet is just about contact information. So you want to have like your name pretty clear on the first page, nothing super fancy, but clear, and your basic contact email and phone number, and mailing address. European CVs tend to add a lot of personal information, but even if you're married or a photo, for American CVs, you keep it simple. It's basically how to contact me. And you want your full name on the rest of the pages. And so you want to make sure all of your dates are aligned to the right or to the left, not just kind of somewhere in the middle, so that they're easy to see and so people can track your experience over time. And you want to just generally keep your formatting really clean and simple. And you don't want to try to cram things in. It's always better to be concise and selective than to make it denser. Because your PIs will be reading a ton of CVs, so they want to be able to find things really easily. And you want to keep your font somewhere between 11 and 13 point. So fun fact, I printed all your CVs. So I know that there were some that were really big or really small. And so one good trick is hand it to someone, tell them to hold it right here, and then see if they squint or see if they move the paper away. So you want it at a comfortable reading distance. And you want to use caps and bold to emphasize headers or subsections. I've been guilty of overuse of italics in the past, but it tends to make things less readable, not more readable. And this all relates to just make sure you print it before you send it, because that'll really help you catch things that are outside of the printable area. Most people want things within 1-inch margins on all sides. And it'll just help you catch typos and stuff. So if you have access to a printer, definitely do at least one final print before you're emailing it out to a PI that you're really interested in, or submitting it to a grad school application. And one quick fix for a lot of Microsoft Word issues is to save it as a PDF, then print it, and then any formatting problems might come up. So just a quick summary of what we've been talking to you about. We want you to align your experiences and skills to the lab that you're applying to. As we've sort of mentioned, there's a couple different stages at which you might submit your CV, either in an email to a PI where you're describing what you're interested in and asking if they're accepting applicants to graduate school or if their department is. It can vary a lot by institution. Then there's the stage at which you submit it online through the department in a more formal process. So you want to make sure that you're tailoring your CV, the length of it, and what you're saying in it to who you're sending it to and when. You want to identify your strengths. Don't bury them. It's like really easy to do that. So really emphasize them on your CV and make sure they stick out. And focus on clarity. And ultimately, the best thing that you can do is do more research, look for more research opportunities, apply for grants for doing research and things like that. Yeah, so.
I want to say something very quickly. We talk about this, about the 2 pages. The more concise is the better and more clear for people, but I would not kill myself is like 2.5 pages.
Yeah.
When I applied to schools, my CV had like 4 pages. But you know, I've been like in a long journey before PhD. So I will not kill myself, but I know I will probably remove some of the stuff I put there for application at this moment when I look back. But don't kill yourself. It's like, oh, I have like a little longer, or it's like 1 page. It's okay, don't worry.
Yeah, if it's less than 2 pages, also don't worry. Like, that's fine. And especially like, it depends on what point you're at and where you are in your academic career. So these are just a few resources. We'll email this out to you guys. But these are generally like places where you can find out more about science careers and about how to, sell yourself as a scientist and just little things like that.
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.